Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of facilitation, all thanks to the book you sent our way.
Oh yeah, this is going to be good.
I know you're interested in group dynamics and leadership, so I think you're really going to enjoy this one.
Definitely up my alley.
We're going to distill all the key insights and techniques from this book.
Lots to unpack.
So much of what we do in life involves working with others.
Right.
And this book helps us understand how to make those interactions more productive and fulfilling.
Totally.
Okay, so the book starts by defining what facilitation actually is. It's all about helping groups work together, but it's not about taking control.
It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah, for sure.
The book uses this analogy. It describes a facilitator as a midwife for ideas.
Okay.
They're not creating the solutions. They're helping the group kind of birth them organically.
Oh, that's a good analogy. I like that. But it also makes a point of saying facilitation is not the same as mediation or training.
Yeah, good point.
What's the difference?
Well, think of it this way. A mediator steps in when there's already conflict. A trainer is there to teach you specific skills. But a facilitator guides the group's own process of discovery and decision-making.
I see.
They're not there to impose their own ideas.
So if I'm getting this right, a facilitator doesn't come in with all the answers. They come in with a framework for how to find those answers collectively.
You got it. You're exactly right. And the book lays out this framework. It's called the Zenergy framework.
Okay.
And it's all about creating the right conditions for collaboration.
Makes sense.
It boils down to 5 key elements: purpose, culture, being with yourself, being with another, and being with a group.
Wow. Those last 3 sound pretty deep. Being with yourself sounds almost philosophical.
It is, in a way.
How does that apply to working with a group?
That's where it gets interesting. The book argues that self-awareness is crucial for effective facilitation.
Okay.
You need to understand your own biases, your triggers, and communication style before you can effectively guide others.
Interesting. So it's like know thyself so you can help the group know itself.
Exactly.
I like that.
And beyond this Zenergy framework, the book introduces this Facilitation model.
Okay.
This is a tool for making those cooperative processes we talked about truly sustainable.
Okay, cool. I'm all ears. Break down these Facilitators for me.
Okay, so Facilitation stands for freedom, alignment, congruence, truth, and synergy.
Okay.
Each element is crucial, and they all work together to create a flourishing group environment.
Okay, got it. So freedom, I'm guessing that's about making sure everyone feels safe to participate and share their ideas.
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah.
It's about creating that psychological safety where people aren't afraid to speak up, even if their ideas are different or unpopular.
Yeah, that's important.
Without that freedom,
you're
not going to get authentic participation.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And then what's alignment about?
Alignment is about making sure everyone is rowing in the same direction.
Okay.
It's about having that shared understanding of the group's purpose and goals.
Right. So it's like having a shared vision for the group.
Without it, you'll have people pulling in different directions.
Right. And the group won't get anywhere.
Exactly.
Okay. So alignment is like setting the compass for the journey. Everyone knows where they're headed and why. What about congruence?
Oh, that's a good one.
Isn't that about walking the walk, not just talking the talk?
You nailed it. It's about making sure the group's actions are consistent with their stated values.
Okay.
It's about authenticity and integrity.
Right.
If a group says they value open communication, but then they shut down dissenting opinions, that lack of congruence is going to create problems.
Yeah, definitely. Resentment and distrust.
Exactly.
Okay. Seeing if these pieces fit together. So we've got freedom, alignment, congruence. What about truth?
Okay, so
that one feels a bit more, well, philosophical.
It's about encouraging honesty and vulnerability within the group.
Okay.
It's about creating a space where people feel safe to share their true thoughts and feelings, even if they're messy or uncomfortable.
Oh, wow. So it's about going deeper than surface level agreement and really getting to the heart of what people are thinking and feeling.
That's it.
Okay.
It's about fostering a culture of authenticity and transparency where people can be real with each other.
Yeah, I like that.
And that brings us to the final element, synergy.
Synergy. Now that one sounds a little woo-woo to me.
I know, right?
Does the book give any concrete examples of what this actually looks like in a group?
Absolutely. It's not just a mystical concept. Synergy is that state
where
the group becomes more than the sum of its parts.
Okay.
It's when everyone is firing on all cylinders,
Yeah.
ideas are flowing freely, and the group seems to effortlessly move towards its goals.
I can see that.
The book uses a great anecdote about a facilitator named Hazel Hodgkin to illustrate this.
Oh, cool. I love a good story. Tell me about Hazel.
Well, Hazel was facilitating a policy meeting for a political party.
Oh.
As you can imagine, there were some strong personalities and different opinions.
Yeah. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It could have been. But Hazel was able to create the conditions for synergy to emerge.
Okay.
She established clear ground rules, made sure everyone felt heard and respected, and kept the group focused on their shared goal.
Okay, so even in a potentially volatile situation, with the right facilitation, synergy is still possible.
Exactly. And that's the power of the FCTS model. When you have all those elements in place, you create fertile ground for collaboration and creativity to flourish.
I like it. Okay, that makes sense. So we've got these two big frameworks, but Zenergy and FCTS. Where does the book go from there?
Well, it goes on to explore this really interesting concept called cooperacy.
Cooperacy. I've never heard of that. What's the idea?
It's about full cooperation and consensus-based decision-making.
Okay.
Everyone has an equal voice, and everyone's needs are considered.
Interesting.
It's a fascinating concept that
Yeah.
the book explores in depth.
Wow, that sounds very different from how most organizations and groups operate. But before we dive into cooperacy, let's take a closer look at some of the practical techniques the book outlines. I'm guessing it's not all theory and frameworks. There's got to be some hands-on stuff in there, right?
You bet. The book is full of practical techniques,
Got
from icebreakers to brainstorming techniques to conflict resolution strategies.
Awesome. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. What kind of techniques are we talking about here?
Well, it runs the gamut from structured rounds where everyone gets a chance to speak uninterrupted to visioning exercises where the group imagines their ideal future to techniques for fishing for agreement during conflict resolution.
Fishing for agreement. That sounds intriguing.
It is. It's about listening for those subtle cues. That agreement is emerging, even when people are expressing different opinions.
I see.
The facilitator then gently guides the group toward that common ground, rather than forcing a formal vote or pushing for a quick resolution.
Oh, that's interesting. That sounds like a really nuanced skill. I bet it takes a lot of practice to be able to pick up on those subtle cues and guide the conversation in that way.
You're absolutely right. And the book emphasizes that effective facilitation is a craft that takes time and practice to develop.
Makes sense.
It's not something you can just pick up overnight.
Yeah, for sure. So it's about developing that sensitivity to group dynamics, that ability to read the room and respond in a way that fosters collaboration and creativity.
Exactly.
Oh.
And that's one of the things I love about this book. It really gets into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to be a skilled facilitator. From those subtle communication skills to those broader frameworks for understanding group dynamics.
This is great. And this is just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface of what this book has to offer. Stay with us as we continue our deep dive into the world of facilitation.
And the book doesn't stop there. It even delves into the idea of facilitating yourself, which kind of ties back to that being with yourself concept.
Yeah.
From the Zenergy framework.
Oh, right. Yeah. So this is where those personal growth aspects start to kick in.
Exactly.
Cool.
It encourages you to explore your own comfort levels with different aspects of your identity and experience.
Okay.
It even talks about how our upsets can be setups for growth.
Yeah.
Encouraging us to look at our reactions as opportunities for self-discovery.
I see. That's a powerful reframe. Instead of seeing those difficult emotions as something to avoid, we can actually use them to learn and grow.
Right.
But how do we actually facilitate ourselves?
Well, the book offers some suggestions like journaling, physical activity, and seeking support from other facilitators.
Make sense?
It emphasizes the importance of developing a regular practice of self-reflection and self-care.
Okay. That makes sense. If we want to help others navigate their inner landscapes, we need to be familiar with our own. Okay, so we've talked about the frameworks, the techniques, but I have to imagine facilitation isn't always smooth sailing, right?
Yeah.
What about those times when things get messy?
Of course, the book acknowledges those inherent challenges.
Yeah.
It talks about handling conflict, managing power imbalances, staying neutral, resisting the urge to give advice. It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah. You've got those strong personalities, disagreements that spiral out of control. Does the book give any advice? on how to handle those situations?
It does. For example, it talks about using strategic questioning to guide the group back on track when things start to go off the rails.
Strategic questioning. That sounds like a skill that could come in handy
Yeah.
in all sorts of situations, not just in formal facilitation roles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the book emphasizes that.
Yeah.
These facilitation skills aren't just for professionals. They're valuable for anyone who wants to communicate more effectively and build stronger relationships, whether it's in a team setting, a family setting, or even in your personal life.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I love about this deep dive. It's giving me tools that I can use in all areas of my life. But speaking of tools, the book also dives into the ethical considerations of facilitation.
Right.
That feels really important, especially as facilitation becomes more prevalent in business and organizational settings.
You're right. It's crucial. The book points to the IAF, the International Association of Facilitators, and their statement of values and code of ethics.
Yeah.
They stress things like neutrality, conflicts of interest, confidentiality, and the ongoing development of facilitators.
Wow. So there's a whole professional organization dedicated to upholding ethical standards in facilitation.
There is.
Oh, wow.
And the book really drives home why this is so important. In the wrong hands, facilitation techniques could be used to manipulate people or manufacture consent,
Yeah.
especially in those corporate settings where there's a lot of pressure to achieve specific outcomes.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. But it makes sense why ethical considerations need to be front and center.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like this book isn't just about making meetings run smoothly. It's about using facilitation
Yeah.
to create positive change in the world.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting for you. Given your passion for sustainability, the book connects the principles of facilitation to the bigger picture of building a more sustainable society.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more about that connection. How does facilitating a meeting translate to something as big as sustainability?
It argues that the same values that make for effective facilitation, things like cooperation, consensus, valuing individual contributions, can also be applied to addressing social and environmental challenges.
I see.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness and finding ways to work together for a common good.
Okay, so it's about using those skills
Yeah.
of listening, collaboration, and shared decision-making
Yeah.
to tackle those big systemic problems we're facing.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's about shifting from a mindset of competition and scarcity
Yeah,
to one of cooperation and abundance.
right. Wow, I'm starting to see how facilitation could be a really powerful tool for social change.
It is. And the book doesn't just talk about the big picture. It also provides practical guidance on how we can apply these principles in our own lives, starting with our own personal growth and development.
Okay.
It encourages us to become more aware of our own biases, to practice empathy and compassion, and to be willing to challenge our own assumptions.
So it's about starting with ourselves, with our own inner work, and letting those positive changes ripple outwards.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And one of the ways the book suggests we can do that inner work is through exploring our comfort levels with different aspects of our identity. It even goes into the different levels at play
Right.
within ourselves and within groups.
Different levels. What does that mean?
So the book talks about the thinking level, the emotional level, the physical level, the heartful speaking level,
Yeah.
and even an intuitive level.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of levels. Break it down for me. What do those levels actually look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine you're in a meeting. The thinking level is all about logic and analysis.
Okay,
It's where people are focused on data, facts, and figures.
I see.
The emotional level is where feelings and reactions come into play.
Okay.
It's where you might see people getting defensive,
Yeah,
passionate, or even tearful.
makes sense.
The physical level is about body language, right?
Yeah.
Whether people are engaged and energized
Yeah.
or slumped over and checked out.
Yeah, for sure.
And then there's heartful speaking, which is about communicating authentically and vulnerably.
Okay.
It's about speaking from a place of genuine connection and empathy.
So instead of just stating your opinion, you're also sharing the feelings and values behind it.
Exactly. And finally, there's the intuitive level, which the book describes as a state of heightened awareness and connection.
Okay.
It's that feeling of flow where the group seems to be operating almost as a single unit.
Okay. That one sounds a bit mystical, like a collective hive mind or something.
It can feel that way.
Wow.
And the book suggests that skilled facilitator can learn to sense these different levels
Yeah.
and use a variety of techniques
Yeah.
to shift the group's energy as needed.
Interesting. So if a group is stuck in analysis paralysis, dwelling in that thinking level for too long, A facilitator might use an icebreaker activity or a movement exercise
Yeah.
to shift them to a more playful, physical level.
Precisely. Or if a group is avoiding conflict, a facilitator might encourage heartful speaking to help them tap into those unexpressed emotions and create a space for more authentic dialogue.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is making me realize how much skill and awareness is involved in effective facilitation. It's not just about keeping a meeting on track. It's about understanding those subtle group dynamics and being able to respond in a way that fosters collaboration and creativity.
You're getting it. And the book provides so many practical tips for how to actually do that.
Right.
It talks about using questions and suggestions
Yeah.
rather than giving advice, and constantly negotiating with the group to make sure everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about empowering the group to find their own solutions rather than imposing your own ideas on them.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And it's about recognizing that every group is different
Yeah.
and that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to facilitation.
So it's about being adaptable, responsive to the unique needs and dynamics of each group you're working with.
Absolutely. And speaking of unique dynamics, the book also delves into the world of online facilitation, which is becoming increasingly relevant in today's digital age.
Oh, yeah. That's something I've been really curious about. How does facilitation change when you're dealing with virtual spaces instead of face-to-face interaction?
It's definitely a different ballgame. The book explores the opportunities and challenges
Yeah.
unique to online groups,
Yeah.
the tools and platforms used, and the strategies for building relationships and keeping people engaged.
So things like using icebreakers and finding ways to create that sense of connection and community even when people are physically separated.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about adapting those core facilitation principles to the digital environment.
Right. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm starting to see facilitation in a whole new light.
I'm glad to hear it. And one thing that really stands out from the book is its emphasis on the power of cooperative groups, particularly when it comes to decision-making.
Ah, yes. The dreaded decision-making process. I'm all too familiar with those meetings.
Yeah.
That drag on forever with no resolution in sight.
Right.
Does the book offer any strategies for making that process smoother and, well, more cooperative?
It does. It talks about the importance of proactive consensus,
Okay.
where everyone actively contributes solutions rather than just criticizing ideas.
That feels like a major shift from how most groups approach decision-making.
It is.
Instead of focusing on what's wrong with each idea, you're looking for what's right and building on that.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And the book encourages facilitators to create a space where it's safe for people to disagree and to challenge each other's ideas, but always with the goal of finding solutions that work for everyone.
Right. That sounds like a delicate balance to strike, but I can see how it would lead to more creative and effective outcomes.
It does.
So if things do get heated, as they often do in group settings, the book offers guidance on conflict resolution. Okay. This is where my anxiety starts to spike. Conflict is definitely my least favorite part of working with groups.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But the book emphasizes that conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's often an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding.
Okay. That's a helpful reframe. So how does the book suggest we actually handle conflict when it arises?
It goes back to those key facilitation principles we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Creating a safe and inclusive space, listening deeply to each other's perspectives, and finding ways to move forward together. It also introduces the concept of the 3 H's of conflict resolution: holding,
Yeah.
hearing, and healing.
Oh, I love that. The 3 H's, it sounds so much more compassionate
Yeah.
than the usual fight or flight response to conflict.
It is. And the book provides practical techniques for facilitating each of those H's.
Okay.
For example, holding the space might involve using grounding techniques
Okay.
like deep breathing or visualization to help people regulate their emotions. Hearing involves using active listening skills to truly understand each other's perspectives, even if we don't agree with them. And healing is about finding ways to repair any damage that's been done and to move forward in a way that strengthens the group's bonds.
Wow. Okay. This is starting to make conflict feel a little less scary.
Yeah.
It's not about avoiding it or suppressing it. It's about approaching it with curiosity and compassion and using it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And the book emphasizes that. The facilitator's role in conflict resolution is not to solve the problem for the group,
Right.
but rather to create the conditions for the group to solve the problem themselves.
So it's about empowering the group to work through the conflict
Right.
rather than imposing a solution from the outside.
Precisely.
Okay, I like it.
And the book provides a whole toolkit of techniques for doing that, from structured rounds
Yeah.
to brainstorming to role-playing.
Yeah. Wow. This is a lot to take in. I'm starting to see how deep this world of facilitation goes. It's not just about managing logistics and keeping people on track. It's about understanding human dynamics, fostering collaboration, and creating those conditions for collective wisdom to emerge.
You're exactly right. And one of the things that really sets this book apart is its focus on the role of the facilitator as a process guide rather than a content expert.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that the facilitator doesn't need to be an expert on the topic at hand. In fact, it's often better if they're not.
Interesting.
Their role is to guide the group through a process of exploration and discovery
Yeah.
rather than to provide answers or solutions.
Okay. So if a group is trying to develop a marketing plan, the facilitator doesn't need to be a marketing guru.
Exactly.
Okay.
They might know something about marketing, but their primary role is to help the group tap into their own expertise and to create a space where everyone feels empowered to contribute their ideas.
Right. That makes so much sense. It's about recognizing that the wisdom is in the room, and the facilitator's job is to help the group access and unleash that wisdom.
You got it.
Awesome.
And the book provides a whole range of techniques for doing that, from using open-ended questions to encouraging active listening to creating a space for silence and reflection.
Silence and reflection. I never thought about that as a facilitation technique.
It's a powerful one. Often the most profound insights emerge when we create space for stillness and allow those quiet voices to be heard.
Okay. I'm definitely going to have to experiment with that one.
You should.
Yeah.
And one of the techniques that the book highlights for creating that space for reflection is something called clearing processes.
Clearing processes. That sounds intriguing. What are those?
They're basically techniques for resolving underlying emotional tension or conflict that might be blocking the group's progress.
Oh, so it's like clearing the air so the group can move forward with a clean slate.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And the book provides a variety of clearing processes, from simple check-ins to more in-depth exercises that involve exploring those deeper levels of communication we talked about earlier.
Right. This is making me realize how much more there is to facilitation than I ever imagined.
And we're just scratching the surface. This book is a treasure trove of insights and techniques.
This is great. Okay, so we've got the frameworks, the techniques, the ethical considerations, and even those deep personal growth aspects. What else does the book cover?
Well, it wouldn't be complete without exploring the actual training of facilitators.
Oh, that's right. I remember reading about a specific training program mentioned in the book. Tell me more about that.
The book describes a peer learning framework developed by Zenergy, the same organization that created the Zenergy framework we discussed earlier.
Oh, right. Yeah. So it's like a facilitator boot camp. What kind of topics does the training cover?
It covers all the key aspects. We've been discussing the role of the facilitator, those specific techniques and processes, even self and peer assessment, so facilitators can continue to grow.
This book is really like a one-stop shop for all things facilitation. I'm so glad we decided to do this deep dive.
Me too.
Yeah.
And, beyond the training program itself, the book offers tons of additional resources.
Okay.
It lists several organizations and networks for facilitators, including the IAF, plus a huge bibliography of books and articles.
Wow, that's a rabbit hole. I could easily get lost.
I know, right?
It's amazing to see how much knowledge and expertise there is out there in the world of facilitation.
It is, and it all stems back to this one book you shared with us. You've inspired me to learn more about this fascinating field.
Me too. And I know our listeners are going to find these insights incredibly valuable as they explore the power of facilitation in their own lives. And speaking of valuable insights, one thing that really struck me was how the book framed those inevitable upsets we experience in life.
Yeah.
It doesn't see them as failures, but rather as opportunities for growth.
Right. It's such a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of resisting or suppressing those difficult emotions, we can actually use them as fuel for our own evolution. And the book argues that the more we do that work on ourselves, the more effectively we can hold space for others to do their own growth and transformation within a group.
Right. It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. If we want to support others, we need to make sure our own cup is full. And that makes me think about something else the book touched on, the power dynamics that inevitably exist within groups.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
How does a facilitator navigate those, especially when they can be so subtle and often unspoken?
You've hit on a really crucial point. The book acknowledges those power dynamics are always there,
Right.
whether we're aware of them or not.
Right.
It encourages facilitators
Yeah.
to become more conscious of those dynamics
Yeah.
and to find ways to mitigate any negative effects.
So it's about recognizing that the facilitator themselves holds a certain amount of power simply by virtue of their role.
Exactly.
And it's important to use that power responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The book encourages facilitators to be mindful of their own biases, their triggers, and those habitual patterns of behavior that might be influencing how they interact with the group.
I see.
It's about using that self-awareness to create more equitable and inclusive space where everyone feels valued and respected.
And beyond the facilitator's own awareness, are there specific techniques for addressing those power imbalances within the group itself?
Definitely. The book talks about things like using structured rounds to ensure that everyone has a chance to be heard.
Okay.
Consciously inviting those who are often marginalized or overlooked to share their perspectives and creating a space where it's safe for people to challenge those unspoken hierarchies.
So it's about making sure that everyone feels empowered to participate fully, regardless of their position or status within the group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the book provides several specific strategies for doing that, from setting clear ground rules,
Right.
using visual aids and other techniques to make information more accessible to everyone.
This is making me think about all those times I've been in meetings or group settings where I felt like my voice wasn't being heard or my perspective wasn't valued. If only there had been a facilitator who was attuned to those power dynamics and knew how to create a more inclusive and equitable space.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And the book emphasizes that these skills aren't just for professional facilitators. They're valuable for anyone who wants to create a more just and equitable world, whether it's in our workplaces, our communities, or even in our families.
Right. So it's about taking those principles of facilitation and applying them to all areas of our lives, not just in formal settings.
Absolutely. And one of the areas where I think these principles are especially relevant is in online spaces, where those power dynamics can be even more pronounced.
Right. That's a great point. We've been talking a lot about in-person facilitation, but the book also dedicates a whole section to online facilitation.
Okay. And it highlights both the challenges and the opportunities.
Yeah.
Unique to working with groups in virtual spaces.
Right. So things like building trust and rapport across physical distances, finding ways to keep people engaged and motivated when they're not in the same room, and navigating those technical glitches that inevitably arise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book provides a ton of practical tips and strategies for addressing those challenges.
Yeah.
From using icebreakers and other virtual team building activities to structuring online meetings effectively,
Yeah.
to choosing the right tools and platforms for the job.
Wow. I'm starting to see how online facilitation requires a whole new set of skills and strategies, but also how those core principles of creating a safe and inclusive space, clarifying purpose and goals, and guiding the group towards its desired outcomes, those still apply no matter what the setting.
You got it. It's about adapting those principles and techniques to the digital environment.
And speaking of adaptation, one thing that really stood out to me was the book's emphasis on the importance of flexibility and adaptability for facilitators.
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach, right? Every group is different. Every situation is unique. And we need to be able to respond in the moment.
Absolutely. The book encourages us
Yeah.
to embrace those moments of uncertainty and ambiguity as opportunities for learning and growth, both for ourselves and for the group.
That's a good point. So it's about being present to what's happening, listening deeply to the group's needs, and being willing to adjust our approach as needed.
Precisely.
Okay.
And the book offers several techniques for developing that flexibility and adaptability, from practicing mindfulness to using check-in questions
Yeah.
to get a sense of the group's energy and needs.
And ultimately, it sounds like effective facilitation is about more than just techniques and strategies. It's about cultivating a certain mindset, a way of being in the world that values collaboration, empathy, and a belief in the power of collective wisdom.
You said it. It's about approaching those group interactions with a spirit of curiosity, compassion, and a deep respect for the unique contributions of each individual.
Yeah. This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of what facilitation is, what it can achieve, and how I can apply these principles to my own life and work.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I hope our listeners feel the same way. This book is a true gem, packed with insights and practical guidance that can help us all become more effective facilitators, whether we're leading meetings, working on teams, or simply navigating those everyday interactions with people around us.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who are eager to learn more, we'll be sure to include a link to the book and those other resources we mentioned in the show notes.
Great idea.
Okay.
And in the meantime, here's something to ponder. We've talked about facilitating groups, but what about facilitating change on a larger scale? How can we use these principles to create a more just and sustainable world?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. It's a reminder that the skills and values we've been discussing aren't just for formal facilitators, they're for all of us who want to make a positive difference in the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of facilitation. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.
See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.